Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR CBS Spoiler Today channel. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. When Victor hatched his plan to kidnap Lily and the twins and hold them in return for his company, he promised his family he'd do them no harm. As the scheme progressed, he claimed to have gotten Lily on board, but having only his word to take for it, we, along with his family members, have been left wondering if he's telling the truth. The more we think about it, the less likely it seems that she'd go along with it. Lily loathed Victor after he double-crossed her and kicked her to the curb at Chancellor in order to hand it over to Nikki, so why on earth would she be willing to put her life on hold in order to help him get his company back? Sure, she was pissed at Kane, and we're sure the idea of teaching him a lesson would have been appealing, but, again, why would she bother to go to these lengths? Lily asks Victor for a favor. YNR. Adam may have been onto something when he wondered aloud what dear old dad had promised Lily to get her to go along with his plan. As he opined, it would have had to have been something significant. Well, dear soap readers, we can only think of one thing that fits the bill. As it turns out, that one thing became the focus of the storyline last week when Victor duped Phyllis into signing Chancellor back over to him. We were assuming that he did that in order to give it back to Nikki, but that may not have been the case at all. Victor Phyllis YNR. The more we mulled this over, the more questions we had. Primarily, why would Victor have gone after Catherine's company and not his own? With Phyllis willing to cut a deal to free Jack, why would he not have insisted that she cough up Newman Enterprises? It only makes sense if he needed Chancellor for reasons such as, in order to fulfill his end of the bargain with Lily, and keep her and the twins going along with the ruse. Yep, we think Victor promised Lily he'd give her Chancellor if she helped him coerce Kane into pressuring Phyllis into giving the companies back. It's the only reason he'd have asked for Chancellor before his own, and the only basis for Lily agreeing to help a man she can't stand strong-arm a man she'd washed her hands of entirely. Handily, Victor and Nikki are on the outs for the moment, so that dispenses with any guilt he might have felt where his wife was concerned. But, boy, will Billy be pissed. Billy. As it turns out, with Nikki about to make a bold move against Victor, he might be glad he agreed to hand over her company to Lily. The deeper this twisted scheme unravels, the clearer it becomes that nothing about Victor Newman's plan is as simple as he would have anyone believe, and the more his family, along with everyone watching from the outside, tries to make sense of his motives, the more unsettling the truth begins to feel. Because while Victor insisted from the very beginning that neither Lily Winters nor the twins would be harmed during his calculated abduction plot, there has always been an unspoken tension simmering beneath his promises, a sense that his word alone is far from enough to guarantee safety, especially given his long, complicated history of manipulation, betrayal, and ruthless ambition. And as the days pass and his claims that Lily has willingly joined forces with him continue to hang in the air without any real proof, doubt grows heavier, not lighter, because Lily is not someone who bends easily, not to Victor, not to anyone, and certainly not after the way he once dismantled her world by stripping her of Chancellor and handing it over to Nikki Newman without hesitation or remorse, an act that didn't just cost her a company but shattered her trust and pride, leaving scars that would make any alliance between them seem not only unlikely but almost impossible. And yet, here they are, somehow entangled in a dangerous charade that forces everyone to question what could possibly be powerful enough to bridge that divide. What kind of offer Victor could have placed on the table that would make Lily even consider putting her life on hold, risking her safety and reputation, and playing along with a scheme designed to manipulate Kane Ashby and pressure others into surrendering control. Because while it's easy to imagine that Lily might enjoy the idea of Kane facing consequences, especially given their complicated past and the resentment that still lingers, revenge alone doesn't explain this level of involvement, not when the stakes are this high and the risks so personal, which is precisely why Adam Newman's quiet but piercing observation starts to feel less like speculation and more like the key to everything. Because when Adam questioned what Victor could have possibly promised Lily, he wasn't just thinking aloud, he was zeroing in on the one detail that makes this entire puzzle click into place, the idea that whatever Victor offered had to be monumental, something that would outweigh Lily's hatred, override her better judgment, and make cooperation not just tolerable but worthwhile. And once that possibility takes root, it becomes impossible to ignore the timing of another critical development. Victor's calculated move against Phyllis Summers, where he manipulated her into signing Chancellor back over to him under the guise of another deal. A move that initially seemed like a stepping stone toward restoring Nikki's control but now feels far more strategic and far less sentimental. Because when you step back and examine the sequence of events, the question practically asks itself, why would Victor prioritize reclaiming Chancellor over securing Newman Enterprises, the empire that defines his legacy, unless Chancellor itself was the real objective all along, not as a prize for himself, not as a gift for Nikki, but as currency in a much larger negotiation, a bargaining chip designed to secure Lily's allegiance and ensure her continued cooperation in a plan that depends on her credibility and influence. And suddenly, everything begins to align with chilling clarity. Because if Victor promised to return Chancellor to Lily, to restore what he once took from her and hand back the power and identity she lost, then her involvement makes sense in a way that nothing else could justify, transforming her role from reluctant participant to strategic partner, someone who isn't just going along with the scheme but actively sustaining it because she has something tangible to gain at the end, something that validates the risk and reframes the entire ordeal as a calculated sacrifice rather than blind obedience. And this possibility casts Victor in an even more manipulative light, because it means every step he's taken, every lie he's told, every person he's pressured, has been part of a carefully orchestrated chain reaction designed to bring Chancellor back into his control just long enough to pass it along to Lily, fulfilling his end of the bargain while simultaneously achieving his broader goal of regaining leverage over his own empire. And in doing so, he's managed to exploit not just Lily's past pain but also Phyllis's desperation, Kane's vulnerabilities, and even the fractures within his own family, particularly the growing distance between him and Nikki, whose current rift with Victor conveniently eliminates any immediate conflict over Chancellor's fate, allowing him to proceed without confronting the emotional consequences of choosing Lily over his wife, at least for now. But if this theory holds true, the fallout will be explosive, because Billy Abbott is unlikely to accept this outcome quietly, not when he has his own stakes in the corporate battlefield and his own history with both Lily and Chancellor, and the idea that Victor could once again reshape the power dynamics of Genoa City through sheer force of will is bound to ignite a chain reaction of anger, betrayal, and retaliation that could pull everyone into its orbit, especially as Nikki begins to make bold moves of her own, potentially positioning herself in direct opposition to Victor at a time when his alliances are already fragile and his secrets dangerously close to the surface. Because if Nikki discovers that Chancellor was never meant to return to her, that Victor's true intention was to use it as leverage to secure Lily's loyalty, the sense of betrayal could push her to take drastic action, escalating the conflict beyond anything Victor anticipated and forcing him to confront the very real possibility that his carefully constructed plan could collapse under the weight of its own deception. And yet, for all the risks, Victor remains as confident as ever, moving forward with the quiet certainty of someone who believes he's already accounted for every variable, every reaction, every possible outcome, convinced that by the time the truth comes to light, it will be too late for anyone to stop him, too late for Lily to back out, too late for his enemies to regain control, because in his mind, this isn't just a scheme, it's a masterstroke, a demonstration of his ability to manipulate not just people but entire systems to his advantage, turning betrayal into opportunity and conflict into leverage. But what he may be underestimating is the unpredictable nature of the very people he's relying on. Because Lily is not a pawn, not anymore. And if she senses that Victor's promise is anything less than absolute, if she suspects for even a moment that she's being used again, the alliance he's built could shatter instantly, leaving him exposed in ways he hasn't been in years. And the same goes for Phyllis, for Kane, for Billy, and especially for Nikki. All of whom are navigating their own agendas, their own emotions, their own breaking points, creating a volatile environment where even the most meticulously planned strategy can unravel in an instant. And as the tension continues to build, the question is no longer whether Victor's plan will succeed, but how much damage will be done before the truth finally emerges, and who will be left standing when it does, because in a game this dangerous, with stakes this high, there are no guaranteed victories, only shifting alliances, hidden motives, and the constant, looming possibility that the very deal meant to secure everything could end up destroying it all. As the implications of this hidden agreement continue to ripple through Genoa City, the tension surrounding Victor Newman's grand design only intensifies, because if there is one thing history has proven time and again, it's that Victor never makes a move without layers of strategy beneath it, and yet even by his standards, this particular gambit feels unusually precarious, almost as if he is balancing multiple ticking clocks at once, each one threatening to expose him from a different angle. And at the center of it all stands Lily Winters, whose silence has become more telling than any spoken confirmation ever could, because the longer she remains out of reach, the more her alleged cooperation feels like both a shield and a liability, protecting Victor's narrative while simultaneously raising suspicion among those who know her best, especially Billy Abbott, who has never been one to sit back when something doesn't add up, and who is increasingly convinced that whatever story Victor is selling simply doesn't hold under scrutiny, because Billy knows Lily, knows the depth of her pride and the strength of her convictions, and more importantly, he knows the kind of resentment she harbors toward Victor after being so publicly and ruthlessly cast aside, which is why the idea that she would suddenly align herself with him feels not just unlikely but fundamentally wrong, unless, of course, the incentive is powerful enough to override even that level of distrust, and that thought is precisely what keeps Billy awake at night, turning over every possibility, every angle, every potential outcome, until he arrives at the same chilling conclusion that Adam Newman hinted at earlier, that Lily must have been promised something so significant, so transformative, that it changes the entire equation, and once that idea takes hold, it becomes impossible to ignore the role that Chancellor plays in all of this, because Victor's decision to target Phyllis Summers and manipulate her into handing over the company was not just opportunistic, it was deliberate, calculated, and deeply intentional, suggesting that Chancellor is not merely a piece of the puzzle but the cornerstone of the entire operation, the one asset capable of binding Lily to Victor's cause and ensuring her continued participation in a scheme that grows more dangerous with each passing moment. Meanwhile, as these suspicions begin to coalesce into something more concrete, cracks start to form in the relationships surrounding Victor, particularly with Nikki Newman, whose growing unease is fueled not only by Victor's secrecy but by the subtle shifts in his behavior, the way he deflects certain questions, the way he avoids direct answers when the conversation turns to Chancellor, and the way his confidence seems just a little too rehearsed, as if he is constantly recalibrating his story to stay one step ahead of the truth, and Nikki, who has stood by Victor through countless battles, begins to sense that this time is different, that this isn't just another power play but something far more personal, far more calculated, and far more likely to leave lasting damage in its wake, especially if it turns out that Victor has been using Chancellor not as a means of restoring their shared legacy but as leverage in a private deal with Lily, a possibility that feels like a betrayal not just of their marriage but of everything they've built together over the years. And as that realization begins to take root, Nikki finds herself at a crossroads, torn between her instinct to trust the man she loves and her growing certainty that he is hiding something that could change everything. At the same time, Kane Ashby remains an unwitting but crucial piece of Victor's plan, caught in a web of manipulation that he doesn't fully understand, because while he may suspect that something is off, he has no way of knowing just how deeply he is being played, how his reactions are being anticipated and used to drive the narrative forward, and how his connection to Lily is being exploited as a pressure point, a way to influence his decisions and steer him toward outcomes that ultimately benefit Victor. And this dynamic adds another layer of complexity to the situation, because Kane is not someone who takes betrayal lightly, and if he were to discover that Lily is actively participating in Victor's scheme, not as a victim but as a willing accomplice, the fallout would be immediate and explosive, potentially unraveling the very alliance that Victor is depending on to see his plan through to the end. And yet, for now, Kane remains in the dark, reacting to the information he has, making choices based on incomplete truths, and unknowingly moving exactly where Victor wants him to go. And then there is Phyllis, whose role in all of this cannot be overlooked, because while she may believe that she struck a deal out of necessity, a calculated risk to achieve her own goals, the reality is that she has been maneuvered into a position where her actions have far-reaching consequences that she never intended, because by signing Chancellor over to Victor, she has effectively set the stage for whatever comes next. Whether that means the company ends up in Nikki's hands, Lily's control, or remains a pawn in Victor's ongoing power struggle. And as the pieces continue to shift, Phyllis begins to realize that she may not have been as in control of the situation as she thought. That Victor may have anticipated her every move and used her desperation as a tool to advance his own agenda. And this realization brings with it a sense of urgency, a need to regain control before it's too late, before the full extent of Victor's plan is revealed and the consequences become impossible to contain. As all of these threads converge, the underlying tension reaches a point where something has to give, because a plan this intricate, this dependent on secrecy and cooperation, cannot remain stable indefinitely, especially when so many strong-willed individuals are involved, each with their own motivations, their own suspicions, and their own breaking points. And the question that looms over everything is not just whether Victor will succeed, but whether he has underestimated the very people he is trying to manipulate. Because while he may believe that he has accounted for every variable, the truth is that human emotion is the one factor that cannot be fully controlled, and in a situation like this, where betrayal, ambition, resentment, and desire are all in play, it only takes one unexpected reaction, one moment of defiance, one decision that deviates from the script, to bring the entire structure crashing down. And perhaps the most dangerous variable of all is Lily herself. Because while the theory that she has agreed to Victor's terms in exchange for Chancellor makes sense on a strategic level, it does not account for the emotional complexity of her character. The possibility that she is playing a deeper game of her own, that she has her own plan, her own endgame that may or may not align with Victor's, and if that is the case, then everything changes, because it means that Victor is not the only one pulling strings, that the alliance he believes he controls may in fact be far more fragile than he realizes, and that when the moment of truth arrives, when the deals are revealed and the promises are tested, the outcome may not be what anyone expects, because in a world where power is everything and trust is a luxury few can afford, even the most carefully constructed plans can unravel in ways that no one could have predicted, leaving behind a trail of consequences that will reshape the landscape of Genoa City in ways that will be felt long after the dust has settled. And just when it seems like the truth is hovering on the edge of exposure, ready to break through the carefully maintained illusion, the tension tightens even further, because the closer everyone gets to uncovering Victor Newman's real motive, the more dangerous his silence becomes, and the more unpredictable the reactions of those around him start to feel, especially as Lily Winters's absence stretches into something far more ominous than strategic, raising the possibility that even if she did agree to Victor's terms, she may no longer be fully in control of her role in this unfolding drama, which only deepens the stakes for everyone involved, because if Lily begins to waver or push back, the entire foundation of Victor's plan could fracture in an instant, triggering consequences that spiral far beyond his control. And with Nikki Newman inching closer to taking decisive action, and Billy Abbott growing more determined to expose the truth, it feels inevitable that a confrontation is coming, one that won't just reveal secrets but ignite a chain reaction of betrayal, power shifts, and emotional fallout that could permanently alter alliances, because in the end, no matter how brilliant Victor believes his strategy to be, it rests on a fragile balance of trust and deception, and once that balance tips, there will be no stopping the chaos that follows.